Do all crossovers look dull to you? Are you looking for something that would at least resemble an off-roader? What would you say to a Jaecoo J7? Chances are you have no clue, and that's why you're here to watch this review. So let's crack on. I also recorded a comparison of the Jaecoo 7 and the Kia Sportage. Yes, these two cars are virtually identical in size, although they offer different levels of performance and refinement. Channel members get to watch this comparison early and without ads. Jaecoo 7 or J7 is one of the two models from China's carmaker Chery available in Europe, the other one being Omoda 5. The Omoda 5 is a small crossover about the size of the Kia X-Ceed or Hyundai Kona. The Jaecoo 7 is a compact crossover of similar dimensions to the Kia Sportage or Hyundai Tucson. Jaecoo 7 is a rebadged Chery Tansuo 06. Sorry for the pronunciation. It is available in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. The latter has more equipment and slightly smaller boot. This is the all-wheel drive model. The boxy shape gives the Jaecoo 7 a somewhat off-roady look. Without context, it looks like a much bigger SUV. Front is dominated by a massive grille. On the sides are horizontal daytime running lights with a sort of matrix design. Lower are the proper headlights. The profile is clean and simple. Black cladding at the bottom and piano black around the windows make the Jaecoo look slimmer and visually add some ground clearance. In the rear we have the trendy light bar running across the tailgate from one tail lamp to the other. Inside this plastic element is the Jaecoo badge. The bumper features some grey plastic, which is a fake rear skid plate. Also fake are the exhaust tips. The real exhaust tips, two of them, are under the bumper. So this is what it looks like. Before I go any further, I'd just like to say I turned off all the proximity access features like the door handles popping out as I approach the car, welcome lights or locking and unlocking or opening of the tailgate. Like in Hyundais and Kias, also here there is no gesture control, so no swinging your foot under the tailgate. The tailgate starts opening as you approach the car with a key, and I'm not a fan. According to the specification, the boot volume is 480 liters in 5-seat configuration and 1256 liters with the second row backrest folded. The front-wheel drive version boot is some 84 liters bigger because the all-wheel drive model has all-wheel drive and a slightly larger fuel tank. While 480 liters sounds great, what you see here is about 350 liters. So, the remaining 120 liters is under the false floor. Great! Let's drop the floor then. Well, that would be too easy. The mini spare is mounted on a styrofoam stand because there's a bulge above the rear differential. If it were up to me, I'd try to find a different spare wheel design to rest directly on the bulge. Also, the styrofoam insert around the mini spare basically renders this space useless. I've seen videos of the front-wheel drive version where the spare is lower and so is the floor, but then there's a higher load lip and no flat cargo area with the rear backrest down. It's as if this car was designed by someone who's never used a car before. Good job, doors cover the sills. I always prefer cars which allow me to keep my trousers clean throughout the wet and snowy months. I'm 175 centimeters tall, the driver's seat is set to my driving position, and I have good legroom and headroom. The headroom is a bit of a cheat though, because the backrest is tilted a bit more than I'd like, and the angle is not adjustable. The door pockets accommodate my water bottle. There are also cup holders in the armrest. The backrest splits 40-60, there is no ski hatch. The rear seat doesn't slide. There's only one air vent, so the rear passengers will have to draw straws who's going to be hot or cold. There are two USB ports, one is a USB-A and the other a USB-C. Side seats are heated. Isofix anchor points are on the side seats. The Jaecoo 7 cockpit looks promising. The build quality is good, everything feels solid, nothing squeaks, nothing rattles. There are no unpleasant smells like in older Hyundai and Kia cars and like in some Chinese cars just a few years ago. All this is good news. More good news is the instrument layout with the gauge cluster, the head-up display and a central screen. This one is almost 15 inches across, and fortunately designers didn't succumb to the temptation of putting the speedo and other driver information here. However, this is where the good news ends, and I'm not talking about the interface. It's how stable, or rather unstable, the software is. One of the first things I do in a car is to pair my phone with the car's Bluetooth hands-free system. Usually at this stage there is a prompt whether I'd like to connect Android Auto. Sure, let's. This is where I encountered a problem because for the first few days the Android Auto connection was unstable. On a good day the phone remained connected for about 15 minutes, on a bad day it kept breaking connection every dozen seconds or so. If at least it remained disconnected, but it tried to reconnect. So, I'm browsing through the settings, Android Auto drops in the background, and when it reconnects, I'm taken from the settings I was browsing to Android Auto. And then it drops again. The only way to get out of this vicious circle is to delete the Android connection. However, when I restart the car, there will be a prompt to reconnect, and there doesn't seem to be an option to cancel, only to accept. Or the customizable button on the steering wheel. I set it to take me to the driver assist features. When setting off from home one morning, I pressed the button to go into the settings and disable ESAP. I pressed it several times and nothing happened. A few minutes later, I was taken out of Android Auto into the driver aid settings several times, probably as many as I clicked the button when I set off. After a few days, at least the Android Auto connection was stable, but delays with the function button on the first start of the day remained. This doesn't inspire confidence. I don't know what else is going to crash. I just hope it's not going to be me. The vehicle settings menu is quite extensive, so it's worth going through it and finding out what features your car has, so later you can disable some of them. For example, I suggest you disable the 360 camera view with indicator at low speeds. If you're navigating somewhere and there are many maneuvers, the camera will obstruct the sat-nav directions. Theoretically, these will be repeated on the head-up display, but only when you're using the OEM sat-nav. Android Auto navigation is only on the central screen. That is, if Android Auto is currently available. When using Android Auto, you have several unmarked menus at your disposal. On top left of the screen is a pull-down menu with notifications, and on top right is a pull-down menu with shortcuts. And at the bottom is the AC menu, but I still haven't figured out which part of the screen I should click to launch it. The screen, even in its darkest setting, can be too bright for some on a cloudy day. Headlights aren't tied to the display mode. I suppose there is a setting somewhere to force the dark display mode, but there are so many settings and in so many places that I'm not always able to find what I was looking for again. I understand the first iPad generation entered adulthood, and I don't mind using a tablet to check who's that actor playing a supporting role in a show I'm watching at the moment. However, I'd rather have simple and direct access to settings of a vehicle that I'm driving on public roads. Also, looking in the rearview mirror too long will upset the driver attention monitor. Forget playing with the car settings while you're driving. Fortunately, the windscreen defroster and the seat heater buttons are repeated here on the central console next to the drive mode selector knob. Perhaps the drive modes should be on the screen, and this could be used to control the infotainment system.
Trip normal, trip sport, trip slow.
But what do I know? Under the central display is a place for two phones. One of them is a wireless charger. It's the one on the passenger side. Perhaps this will change in the future in cars for right-hand drive markets. The charger isn't very powerful, but it certainly heats up the phone. Perhaps it would be more effective if it didn't lose contact with the phone all the time, like the system drops the Android Auto connection. No, these two problems are not related, that would be too simple. Under the center console are two USB ports. One of them can be used to play videos on the central screen, and it is also possible to watch them while driving. There is also a 12-volt outlet and a cubby for stuff. On the console, beside the few controls, are also cup holders, storage under the armrest, and a narrow opening which, as it turns out, is to pull out tissues. Apparently, there's a soft tissue pack just the right size. It seems to be the go-to size in China, and these tissues seem to be widely available on Chinese e-commerce websites. Storage under the armrest is good size. It is heated or cooled depending on what you set the climate control to do. The glove box is on the small side, but the door pockets are large. The seats are comfortable. Seat setting memory is displayed on the central screen. I'll go back to what I said about Jaecoo being designed by people who probably never drove a car before. For example, the automatic gearbox has a sequential mode. Usually this requires pushing the selector to the side and moving it up or down to upshift or downshift. Here, some beautiful mind decided it is possible to do it cheaper without moving the lever. So there's a button labeled M for manual, but you have to long press it quite long enough for it to work. Otherwise, you may put the car in neutral by accident, which is actually quite easy because the lever is very light. Performance is better than what Chery declares. The 0 to 100 km/h time should be 11.4 seconds. I got 10.5 seconds in normal mode and 9.9 seconds in sport mode. The problem is that when I really need performance, like to get out of a junction, it takes precious fractions of a second for the car to decide whether it can let me do it. And then the driver in the approaching vehicle is saying bad things about me. It doesn't help the car starts in eco mode by default. It feels just like European brands a decade ago when car makers started to curb emissions. Jaecoo 7 is powered by the same 1.6-liter TGDI engine like the Omoda 5. For Europe, it's been down-tuned to 147 horsepower and 275 Nm of torque. But that's how it meets the Euro 6e emissions criteria. Promised fuel economy of 8 liters per 100 kilometers is combined, I guess, and this is more or less what I averaged. It's more in the city and on motorways, but less on B roads. At the time of recording, Jaecoo already announced it'll soon launch the 7 with a PHEV powertrain. Like in other Chinese cars I've reviewed so far, soundproofing in Jaecoo 7 is not great. Up to about 80-90 km/h you can hear other vehicles, and above 100 km/h it's all wind noise and engine noise, and this is not a pleasant car to do a long journey in. Driver aids don't inspire much confidence. Ride and handling, they're also iffy. It's fine to sit in traffic, but on twisty roads, Jaecoo feels unpredictable. Torque is sent to the rear too late and too abruptly, in my opinion. And yes, I'm talking about quite extreme situations, which a regular driver will probably never experience. However, the front-wheel drive Omoda 5 from the same manufacturer, I drove just a couple of days before Jaecoo, handled much better. So perhaps Jaecoo is set up for off-road driving? Because of my tight filming schedule, I wasn't able to attend a local Jaecoo off-road event where, unsurprisingly, the car performed quite well on a prepared off-road course. I'm still putting together my one-man off-road recovery kit, so I decided against taking Jaecoo to my more challenging obstacle course, and I just performed the usual diagonal approach test. Jaecoo 7 has many modes. We'll start with normal mode. There's quite a bit of slip before ESP intervenes. but the car gets up the incline. I also attempted to drive up with ESP off, but all the power was escaping through the wheels with no grip. Also be aware that changing modes doesn't turn ESP back on. Snow mode looks pretty much the same from the outside and feels the same from the inside like the first attempt in normal mode with ESP on. Mud mode quickly catches the wheels with no grip and transfers power to those with traction. The car gets up no problem. However, in mud mode, I'd expect more slip to ditch some of the mud which sticks to tires. In sand mode, there is a lot of wheel spin, which I'd expect from mud mode, but the car gets up the incline. And finally, off-road mode, in which the car behaved pretty much the same as in mud mode. It quickly detects wheels with limited traction, applies brakes, and pushes the power to the wheels where the power is needed. Visibility front and to the sides is okay, and so is visibility over the shoulder. However, I get the impression the rear view mirror isn't designed for this car. I see too much of the rear seat and too little of what's outside. They could have added a separate mirror to watch the kids or a camera. I'm sure they could have used a part of this massive infotainment display to show what the kids are doing in the back. That's what they've done in the Voya 3, which has a much smaller screen, and if you live in the UAE, it's called the Rabdan 1 over there. The 360 camera system is good, and it helps parking because the parking sensors beep very close to the obstacle. Prices of the Jaecoo 7 start at around €31,500 for the front-wheel drive model. The all-wheel drive Jaecoo 7 also gets things like HUD, heated steering wheel, front seat ventilation, electric lumbar support adjustment or driver's seat memory settings, and it costs €36,000. Jaecoo 7 looks great, but it's meh to drive. Also, I'm concerned about the unstable infotainment system. And how do you like the Jaecoo 7? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.